Hi, this is Mr. Nazarian. Our lesson objective today: I can use appropriate units of measurement to find the volume of a three-dimensional figure. 5th grade standard measurements and data, C3a. Okay, so we have here, and remember, we've talked quite a bit about how the units that we measure volume are in cubes. We've talked about that when we talk about labeling volume. It's always in units cubed, or we've talked about inches cubed, or feet cubed, or miles cubed, or whatever. So just want to have a visualization and thinking about what exactly is 1 cubic inch, or an inch cubed. It means, it looks like, right, it's the shape of a cube, and the dimensions are 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch. As a length and width of 1 inch and a height of 1 inch. And of course, 1 times 1 is 1 times 1 is 1, right? So that's what a cubic inch looks like. So I always want you to think, when you think of like cubic inches, you think of 1 cubic inch, you think about like kind of putting your forefinger and your thumb about an inch apart and think, okay, it's that long, that wide, that high, it's about that big, that's 1 cubic inch. Now I want you to think about, what would 1 cubic foot look like? Think about the relationship between inches and feet. How many inches are in 1 foot? 12, right? So if one of these is 1 cubic inch, then would we have 12 of these cubic inches? Would that equal 1 cubic foot? No, and I'm going to tell you why. So if you think about that, that would make sense, right? 12 inches equals 1 foot. So maybe that would mean that 12 cubic inches equals 1 cubic foot. However, it's not the case, because if we line 12 of these up, here, it would have, the length would then be 12 inches, but the height would still be just 1 inch, and the width would still be just 1 inch. What we have to do to create 1 cubic foot is we have to have all of those dimensions be 12. So instead of just 1 inch long, it's 12 inches long. Instead of 1 inch high, it's 12 inches high. And instead of 1 inch wide, it's 12 inches wide. So 1 cubic foot means we have 12 inches by 12 inches by 12 inches. So how many cubic inches is that? That looks like an awful lot. You can figure it out. How would you figure that out? If we wanted to find out how many of these little cubic inches are in here, we would have to multiply them, right? So we'd have to multiply this 12 long by the 12 tall by 12 wide, and that would give us a total of how many cubic inches? Let's see. So I'd have 12 times 12, which would equal 144. And then I would take that 144 and I'd multiply that by another 12, right? Because it's 12 times 12 times 12. And that would give me a total of 1,728 cubic inches. So 1 cubic foot is equal to 1,728 cubic inches. Now, is that a number that I need you to memorize? Do you think that you need to memorize that to understand what a cubic foot is? Certainly not. But you can figure out how many cubic inches make up a cubic foot by using the knowledge that you have about formula of volume, how many inches are in a foot, knowing that there's 3 dimensions in any kind of a rectangular prism. When we're measuring volume, we're always using 3 dimensions. So what you do need to think about is, what is 1 cubic inch? Like I said, finger and thumb, if you can think about what 1 inch is, and just kind of move it around and say, okay, 1 inch long, 1 inch wide, 1 inch tall. 1 cubic foot is 1 foot. So, if you're pretty good at estimating, you can think, well, if I have about my hands about this far apart, that's about 1 foot. It's 1 foot long by move your hands, 1 foot wide by move your hands, 1 foot tall. That's 1 cubic foot. Maybe like thinking like I don't know. I mean, I guess presents come in all different sizes, but like maybe the size of a box that you'd get well, about what you get like in a shoebox, right? I know shoeboxes aren't in cubes, but somewhere kind of around that size, right? Or, again, thinking about it's 12 inches long by 12 inches wide by 12 inches tall. Finally, and it's in all different kinds of measurements. We can find cubic of that measurement, right? But just for today, we're just going to look at inches, feet, and yards. 1 yard, if you put your hands, a yard apart, 3 feet apart, so whatever you had for 1 foot, you're going to triple that, right? 1 cubic yard is going to be 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet, right? 1 yard by 1 yard by 1 yard. So you have your arms apart, about shoulder width or wider than that, right? Apart. That's 1 cubic yard. So tomorrow we're going to look at these. We're actually going to build different cubic units. Each of you are going to build different size cubic units so we can really get an idea of what these look like. So we can think about what units of measurement would be most appropriate when finding the volume of different objects. So when we look at these 3 objects, an apple, a small closet, and a basketball gym, what would be the most appropriate unit of measurement when measuring any of these? So you think about an apple. Think about an apple in your hand, and then think about these 3 different measurements here, about cubic inches, about cubic feet, and about cubic yards. What would be the most appropriate unit of measurement when measuring an apple? Cubic inches would be the most appropriate, right? Because I don't know about you, but I've never seen an apple that's a foot by a foot by a foot, right? That would be a that would be a humongous apple, and we don't have any apples that big. So that means that if it's less than a foot, then that wouldn't be really appropriate to use, for example, cubic feet for that, because if you did, and it doesn't mean that you couldn't, but it wouldn't be appropriate because you'd have to use some small fraction of a foot and say, oh, it's whatever, a twelfth of a, or well, maybe not, but whatever, a fourth of a cubic foot or something like that, or an eighth of a cubic foot, and that's not a very handy or unit of measurement that makes a lot of sense that you can visualize and think about what that size is. And it's just not nice numbers to work with. So cubic inches is going to make a lot more sense for an apple because, it's a few inches wide, a few inches tall, a few inches long, So cubic inches makes a lot more sense when you're measuring something the size of about an apple. What about if you're measuring a closet? And I don't mean some Mondo, check my crib, walk-in closet. I mean like a smallish closet that's a couple feet wide and a few feet long. What would be the best unit of measurement for a smallish closet? Cubic feet would make the most sense, right? Feet cubed. Because like I said, it's going to be a couple feet wide maybe, a few feet long, and then, whatever, 6 feet tall or something. So it's, or 8 feet tall, but it's not, it's going to be less than a yard wide maybe. So it doesn't mean you couldn't use cubic yards, but cubic feet is probably going to be the easiest and most appropriate way to measure the volume of a closet. What about a big old basketball gym? Okay, so maybe like practice facilities of Blazers. What do you think would be the best way to measure the total volume of a basketball gym? You guessed it, cubic yards. That makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's going to be several yards, many, many yards long and wide and high. So cubic yards would make sense for when you're talking about, measuring the total space in a big basketball gym. Okay, so we're going to look at that tomorrow. Look at different, like I said, we're going to build some different cubic units and think about different objects and what would be the most appropriate ways to measure those. Okay, I will see you tomorrow. Bye.